What can you do to improve your photography beyond the basics? I'm going to tell you on today's episode of
Ask David Bergman.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Here I am, as always, answering your photography questions. Don't forget to go to AskDavidBergman.com. Ask your own photo questions right there on the site. I just might pick it to answer here on a future show. Also, hopefully you're already a subscriber to the Adorama YouTube channel. If not, go ahead and click that button down below. Hit that little bell icon. You'll be notified as soon as new photo shows come out all week long. Also, I'm doing a show on my own YouTube channel called From the Vault. I'm looking back at my 30-year archive and pulling images out, telling the behind-the-scenes story. I hope you'll check that out. I'll put a link in the description down below. All right, this week's question was sent in from Mon K, and Mon wants to know, how do we improve our photography skill once we get to know the ISO, aperture, and shutter speed? Man, this is a great question because in my opinion, photography is half technical and half creative, and you really have to have an understanding of both to be able to make really great images and take your images to the next level. Now, first, let's talk about the technical. Of course, as Mon suggested, you have to know your exposure triangle. ISO, aperture, shutter speed, that's the foundation of everything. If you don't know how to properly expose an image and how to take control of those settings, then you're gonna have trouble. So you have to study that and learn it, know exactly what each one of those things does and how, when you would use one, when you'd use the other, if you want to go into an auto mode of some kind, why you're doing that and how it's going to help you. You want to shoot manual most of the time and just be able to change those settings at will. Now, beyond that, you really need to understand every setting on your camera. There are some major things and some minor things, but all of them are important. Major things, we're talking about like focus modes, right? You have to be able to take control. It's all about taking control of the technology. Focus modes, there are many, many different things involved in getting proper focus. But it gets to the point where it has to just be an extension of your eyes. These have to be just second nature things that you don't think about. If you have to think about the camera before you take a picture, you're going to miss what's happening in front of the lens. I always talk about, in my live workshops, I talk about getting your head out of the camera because all that does is distract you from paying attention to what's in front of the camera. Now, beyond major things like focus modes, there are, of course, many obscure settings, but they can be useful. For example, you could do things like you can program every single button on many of the higher end cameras. You can set, there's a setting on the Canon cameras where you can actually have two different focus modes on two different buttons, right? On the back, the thumb buttons, and understanding how all of that works and using it to make your life easier so that you don't have to think about shooting. You don't have to think about the technical part of the camera. That's really what it's all about. So the technical part is very, very important, but that has to just be a given. Like I said, second nature. You don't want to be thinking about it. So beyond the technical aspects, that's certainly one way to improve your photography is understanding all that. But like I said, it is only half the equation. Let's talk about some of the things you can work on to improve the creative half, the other side. Now, the word photography literally means drawing with light. So understanding light is key. That's what builds an image, is the light, right? The light and the shadow and where everything falls. What you want to do is really start to understand how light works, how it travels, how it falls, how it reflects, all of those things, how it refracts. By reading the light, by looking, you should be able to get to the point where you can walk outside and look at the light instead of being distracted by colors or what's happening. All you're seeing is the light, and you can see where it's falling, what it's reflecting off of, what it's doing, how the color is changing it, and you can use that so you can chase the light per se, right? Back in the old days, especially when I was shooting slide film, where we had no latitude from that film, you really had to learn how to chase the light and pay attention to what was happening. And by doing that, you could put yourself in position to make the best possible images. One way to kind of work on that is to eliminate other variables. So something I like to do is I'll go out with one lens, hopefully a prime lens, not a lens that zooms, but just maybe a 50 millimeter lens, and go out and just shoot with that one lens. When I was a long time ago, I was a student at the Eddie Adams workshop one year. This was Eddie Adams number 6, fantastic workshop. It's still going today. You should check it out. But Dirk Halstead was my team leader, and I came in as the sports guy. I was in my early 20s, and I thought I was hot stuff with my long lenses and my sports action photos. And Dirk made me put all that stuff away, and he told me all weekend I could only shoot with a 50 millimeter lens. And I was not happy. My jaw hit the floor. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't really know what I was doing, but it forced me. It was a great lesson because it forced me to really look at what was happening in front of the camera rather than playing any, doing any tricky things with long lenses and out of focus backgrounds and things like that. I just had to look really at what was happening. And it was a great lesson to me. So understanding how light works and just, working on that, it will really help you take your photography to the next level. Now, if the light doesn't look how you want it, it's not existing how you want it, then you can create your own. That's another level as well. I'm talking about using flash, using constant lights, whatever you need to do, reflectors, to whatever you need to do to paint the picture that's in your head. Some photographers will call themselves available light photographers and think it sounds fancy. I'm going to call you out and tell you exactly what it is. All that means is you're scared of shooting flash. I get it. I've been there. I was absolutely that guy. But once you learn how to use light, it really opens up a whole new world of creativity. C.W. Griffin, my old friend who I worked with at the Miami Herald, he was also my photojournalism professor when I was at the University of Miami as a student. And he used to say, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he used to say he only shoots available light, but that includes the lights that are available in his camera bag. So anything that he has available, he could use. I love that because once you learn the basics of that, it really opens up, like I said, a whole new world of creativity. And then you can start to use color and you can use other light modifiers and there are unlimited possibilities, but things that you can use to create images exactly how you want and the things that you see in your head. So that's all about light. Then we get into composition, right? Composition, very important. What you want to do is, as a photographer, you are guiding your viewer where to look in your photographs. And so, but to do that, you really have to look at the entire frame. You want to, before you hit the button, you want to look at all four corners. You want to pay attention to the background. You really want to use those composition rules like the rule of thirds and the golden ratio and all of that stuff. And then, of course, learn when you can break them. But all of those things put together will allow you to guide your viewer and create emotion in your scene. It can make a more pleasing image. It can create conflict in a picture. It can create something more unusual. All of those things are created by not only light, but also by composition and by using those things to create what you want. So studying the foundation of composition and then using it to your advantage is another way to bring your photography to the next level. Now, one more thing that I think is really important is that will help, I believe, is to master a genre, like one genre of photography, because what that's going to do, it's going to force you down a very narrow path where you can really learn the specifics of that genre. So for example, if you're an action photographer, you're going to have very specific requirements of gear that you're going to need. You're going to be shooting, for the most part, you're going to be shooting fast shutter speeds. You're going to, use light in a certain way, but you're going to be doing all of that differently than somebody who that's maybe into astrophotography, right? Somebody who's photographing stars at night is going to have very different set of tools, both composition and technical, creative and technical, at their disposal. And it can get confusing if you're trying to do all of it. Now, don't understand me. I'm not saying you can't shoot other things, right? Of course, you want to learn as many different things as you can, but I believe it's better to be a specialist than a generalist. And by really focusing in on one thing, you're going to get really good at it. And I'd rather be the best at one thing and pretty good at everything else rather than just average at everything, right? So, it doesn't mean you can't shoot other things, doesn't mean you can't branch out and start to try other genres. But I think when you're learning to really focus in on something you're passionate about, it's going to help you. What you can do also is you can reverse engineer images that you like. So if you're a sports photographer and you see that picture on the cover of Sports Illustrated or whatever, look really carefully at it. Try to see where the light is. Try to figure out what lens was used. Think about where is the photographer shooting that from? What angle? How did they get in that position? All of those things over time, you start by looking at other images and trying to sort of not copy them exactly, but try to work in that same style. And then over time, you're going to develop your own style. So as you do more of it, you're going to put your own spin on it. You're going to find your own way. But certainly looking at those other images and trying to figure them out is one way to go. Now, one more thing beyond the technical and the creative, I just have to mention, very important, is the business side. If you want to do this professionally, you need to learn business skills. That's just a given. This is super important. Running a photography business is no different than running any other service business. All this kind of, I think, boring stuff, but so important. Understanding your cost of doing business, for example. You have to know how much you need to make, how much you need to charge so that you can actually make a profit. Things like reading a profit and loss sheet. You have to know how your business is doing and where to reinvest your money. All those other things like marketing, insurance, and taxes, and so much more that has nothing to do with making pictures. If you, let's say you love baking cakes and that's all you want to do is bake cakes all day, and everybody starts saying, you should sell these cakes, they're so good, they're the best cakes I've ever had. And then you open a bakery, well, now you're running a bakery. You're not baking cakes every day. And it's a completely different skill set, but something you have to know if you want to keep that bakery open. That's the difference between doing this professionally or just keeping it as a hobby. Nothing wrong with keeping it as a hobby. That is totally fine. And if you don't want to do this for a living, then don't worry much about the business stuff. Just work on the technical, work on the creative. But if you do want to make it a business, you absolutely have to learn that. Now, a couple of suggestions on how to actually work on this stuff, how to learn this stuff. Of course, there's lots of free information online. You're watching Adorama TV. There's so much great free content across the YouTubes. That's going to be not a problem. But also get critiques, not just from your mother and your friends, but people you respect in the business. Not only photographers, of course, working photographers, but people in advertising, corporate, people, anybody like that deals with the creative side and maybe buys images. Get critiques from them if you can, especially if you're friendly with them. There are paid ways to do this. A lot of the annual workshops will have critique sessions that you can sign up for. That is one way to go. I offer one-on-one Zoom workshops, and we'll do critiques. Of course, I'm going to, give you some tough love and tell you exactly what you need to work on. It's people like that, people like me who are willing to do that, certainly take advantage of that if you can. And of course, workshops, group workshops. Be selective with workshops. Make sure it's a photographer you respect, somebody who's working in the business. Of course, I do workshops as well, but be selective. If I'm not your cup of tea, that's fine. I still go to workshops myself when I have the opportunity. If it's a photographer whose work I really respect and I feel like I can learn something from them, absolutely I'm going to go. And spend my own hard-earned money. So those are some of the things you can do to improve your photography beyond the basics. Do as many of them as you can, and I think as long as you keep shooting and working on all that stuff, you are going to be just fine. Thanks, Mon, for sending that in. I really appreciate that. Do all the usual stuff. Give this video a like. Comment down below. What are some of the other things you're doing to improve your photography beyond the basics? Keep those photo questions coming at AskDavidBergman.com. I'm answering a new one every week. I'll be back here 10 a.m. Eastern every Monday, so I hope you'll check it out. Next week, I'll be back right here at Ask David Bergman.